Good afternoon and welcome to 3 o'clock with SOC. Give me a second while I welcome our Spanish-speaking neighbors. Buenas tardes, gracias por estar con nosotros hoy día en 3 p.m. con SOC. Si quieren acceso al programa en español, por favor marquen el número que aparece en pantalla, cuál es 646-749-3122. Cuando le contestan su llamada, compartan el clave que es 779-328-221. My name is Tammy Rivera. I'm the Executive Director of Southside Organizing Center. Thank you for being with us this Friday already, July 10th. I want to share with you what's coming up next week so that you'll commit to being with us. We have a great week suggested by Alas to have a special education week coming up next week. And so on Monday, we're hoping to have the Department of Public Instruction and Wisconsin Facets. On Tuesday, we have Elsa Diaz Bautista, the director of ALAS, with us. On Wednesday, we have all Spanish forum once again for you. And our special guest, as requested, is Dr. Tony Baez, a legacy civil rights, bilingual education, Latino rights leader, and also our area school board director. And he'll be speaking about bilingual education, as he did this last week in English. He's going to be speaking about that in Spanish and also special education. And then on Friday, we have again with us, as you all heard from his own mouth, Dr. Keith Posley from our MPS superintendent, because Thursday, the school board makes the decision about what happens with MPS in the fall. So he'll be with us on Friday to give us that news. So you don't want to miss that. What are the weeks coming up that we have planned? We have a week on racial justice, so we can help folks understand that and get engaged with that. We have focus on the much asked for law enforcement reform. What would that mean for us locally? What would that look like? Who are the players there? And then we'll have a week on entrepreneurship and business development as well. We're partnering with the Latino Chamber of Commerce and the Latino Entrepreneurial Network to make that week happen. During our law enforcement week, as promised, I said I was going to go through the community collaborative committee report, and I will do that that week as well. So you don't want to miss the weeks coming ahead. I want to remind you that our programs are available in English and Spanish on Facebook and on YouTube. And the Spanish version is what you see, but with the dubbed over Spanish, in case you want to revisit it or you want to share it. Want to remind you, you can contact us in all the ways you always have, except for in person. And we're looking forward to when that can happen, but we're only going to do it when we're feeling extremely safe for all of you and all the staff. Our phone number is 672-8090. Our email is soc@socmilwaukee.org. And our website is socmilwaukee.org. And we have a whole page dedicated to information, resources, and action that you can take in relation to COVID-19, the coronavirus. In terms of our critical update for the week or for the day, there's a development in the murder of Joel Acevedo. The FPC concluded their investigation. The Fire and Police Commission concluded their investigation, and charges against Officer Mattioli include potential violation of the code of conduct as it relates to integrity, respect, and violation. There is a link that we're going to be sharing with you here on the comments that you can go read what that SOP, Standard Operating Procedure 450, is. It is about personnel investigations for the Fire and Police Commission, but wanted to share that with you and share our solidarity with the continued protest, making progress. We're seeing some things move. Our thoughts and prayers continue to be with you while we're having a hard time. All of us are, but especially those who have tested positive for COVID or lost a loved one. And the Fire and Police Commission are still continuing the review of Chief Morales, so we don't yet have an update for you on that. If you appreciate being with us here at 3 o'clock with SOC, what we ask of you is maybe 3 minutes of your time to fill out a survey that we do that we do daily. And we want to hear what was helpful about the program today, what we should keep doing, what we should change or add. And so please do fill it out. It'll be here on the comments. I'm going to say some hellos. And then I'm going to introduce you to our guest and invite you to ask questions of our guests because we do the form for you. So we really want to get you the information that you need. Hola, Diana. She's excited about next week's special education disabilities community theme. Hola, Marian. All right. I am happy to invite on a personal friend, a professional colleague, the director of the Roberto Hernandez Center, my alma mater from UW-Milwaukee, Alberto Maldonado. Can you bring him on?
Awesome.
Hola, Alberto.
Hello, hello. ¿Cómo estás?
Te veo la carita hace mucho tiempo.
Quarantine phase.
Quarantine. I was saying I see his face. It's been a little bit. And by the way, I've been following your garden because this is the first year. This is the first year I'm doing an urban garden myself. Now I don't have any chickens.
Well, I'm impressed with your setup. So congratulations to you on all that.
We're all trying to find how to keep ourselves healthy and busy and getting sun and air. So bienvenido.
Thank you.
We want to know what's happening. This is our week themed on education.
Excellent.
And so we want to know what's happening at the university, whatever you know that you can share with us.
Of course.
So let us know overall what you know, and then let's dig into what the Roberto Hernandez Center does and what's happening this fall.
Well, yeah. Well, first and foremost, Tammy, thank you and for the invitation to participate in the conversation, and congratulations to you and SOC for having this platform. I've tuned into a few of your shows, and I'm very impressed with the variety, the diversity, and voices that you're bringing into the table, and much needed conversations that we need to have as a community. So congratulations to you. I'm always proud of all your work, and I'm happy to be, sort of a guest now to this conversation. What I can say about what campus it's doing and has been doing since, I would say, dating back 4 months ago, right? March 16th to be exact, when we as a campus decide to move all of our operations in terms of academics to online. Right? We walked through, as many institutions across the country, right, through a process of learning and an opportunity for us to be very proactive about our offerings and how we were engaging with students. So I have to say that, and that I'm very proud of how we've approached that piece in connecting with students, because this was new to both us as practitioners and for students, especially at the end of their semester, right, when most of them were getting ready to graduate, when students were coming from spring break or that sort of situation, and then prepping for summer and how we were gonna work with students. But the most important thing, and I think at the core of everything, the most important part was the outreach, right? How we were connecting with students, making sure that they have the flexibilities to finish their semester strong, to not be overwhelmed by both what is happening still, right? The pandemic, right? Mental health is a key component of that relationship we have with students, and making sure that they're healthy as a whole, right? As an individual, but also that we were providing the information, the flexibility, options for them to finish their semester well. So we went through a different set of processes and offerings the non-credit versus credit option, really providing extended time for folks to finish their work and things like that. So, best practices in terms of that. And then moving forward, deciding that summer was going to be fully online. Also looking at ways that we can provide students with much needed financial assistance, right? And that happened in a couple of ways. Emergency funds were created immediately for the campus to react to students' daily needs, right? Not just tuition related, but food insecurity. Life happens to many of our students, as you know, and particularly to our Latino community, right? Where most of our families have been and can continue to be frontline people out there, working
in the service industry,
in the service industry. So, taking that into consideration, the large community of undocumented and DACA students that we have on campus, making sure that, the messaging going out to them was, clear, and that we were making sure that they were gravitating towards all these resources that the campus was putting in place. So very important that was happening from the academic advising side too. Very proud of my staff, really very proactive and reaching out to our Latinx and Latino students out there to make sure that they were in tune with where to go, how to go about it, when to reach out, and things like that. And then outside of creating the emergency fund as an institution, making sure that students understood how to go about accessing the CARE Act funds that were allocated for the campus, because we receive a good chunk of dollars to also help alleviate a lot of the concerns that students had financially. So going through those processes, making sure that students had access to technology. We work with Dell, the computer company, to get refurbished, new and used computers, and to make sure that students had access to laptops. Understanding that this was a completely different situation. Students are now in a household full-time and probably sharing one computer among 5 different siblings, right?
When they would have depended maybe on the school library or the computer centers on campus, correct?
Correct. Yeah, many students didn't see or had the means to buy themselves a laptop, so they were relying on the technology that the campus has on a daily basis. So now they're empty-handed. How do I produce, a project, a paper? How do I do research if I don't have access to anything? So, and again, not that we have a computer for each of the 26,000 students, but we did our best to make sure that those resources were allocated and put, in front of those students immediately, which is also a great help for them. And then ultimately, in the case of all of our Latino graduates, making sure that we were sending them off with honors, right? And in the absence of us being able to host our annual Palm Gala that we do for graduates, making sure that we were honoring them in such a way that they also felt good about their accomplishment, because it's a huge accomplishment. When we calculated how many Latinos graduated this past year between fall and spring, winter and summer, we're talking about over 380 Latino graduates. That's a significant amount, right? And so making sure that we were honoring them virtually through a series of different things that we did, videos.
Yeah, I saw that. They were beautiful. The photos, the stories.
Yeah, so it's important that also we don't lose sight of that huge accomplishment, because those accomplishments, as you know, Tammy, come with a lot of sacrifice
They do.
Sometimes they don't come overnight. Sometimes it's a long journey that students go through. So,
and sometimes they're the first in all their generations to graduate. So it's a celebration of an entire clan and generations.
And so, yeah, I think moving forward, generally speaking, as a campus, as some of the audience may know already, we as a campus announced that fall will be a hybrid format so far, right? This information can change next week.
Yeah.
We know all of the information that we share on a daily, it's very organic in nature. So, but, allowing, always making sure that students are safe and that any option that we are going to provide both on campus and online are equipped with, the necessary resources, and that we're not putting students in a bad situation, in a situation where they're not safe, where the staff is not safe either. So, anything that is small classes, small size classes, right? The idea is that they would happen on campus, and those classes that are above 50 students and beyond will happen completely online. Then again, I have to repeat, that could change next week if we get a different directive. But, it was important for us as a campus to put that out there for not only our Wisconsinites and all of the students that grew up in this area in the Midwest, but also our international students that, as you know, there's news that came out a couple of days ago about, how those students are going to have to decide to either leave the country, or if institutions like ours, who will have a hybrid scenario, could stay and pursue their important education, right? There's a lot of talent and a lot of, great students that make our institutions very diverse and rich. And so...
and universities are depending on those international student income as well to make up the pie of sustainability. Alberto, let me ask you something. Did the students have to vacate the residency halls after the pandemic to stay at home?
Yeah, that happened gradually. We definitely didn't want to put students out in the in a tough situation. There were students who could not make the decision overnight. They didn't have a place to go. So we had a plan in place where students were given the necessary time to make those adjustments, right? But eventually, through a plan that we had in place, we were able to help those students, get to their destinations and help them, aid them, in that process. But we were very sensitive to, there's some students that live, across the Atlantic, or there's students that live in other parts of the country
where
things were tougher, right? Where COVID was let's say we had students from New York, we did not want to send students back to New York or to places where they were going to feel unsafe. So that happened in a very gradual way. And I think, like I said before, I think the campus has done an outstanding job of making sure that, the number one priority is that students are safe, and that we're giving them the flexibilities that they need to adjust to all these, changes that are new to everyone.
And housing in the fall, is there housing or no?
There will be housing. It will be, again, done with all the things that you can imagine in mind, right? With all the PPE guidelines, making sure that, we go through all those protocols that are necessary for students and parents and families to feel safe and leaving their sons and daughters with us. So yeah, housing, it's planned as of now to continue in that fashion, and then we'll see. I think it's part of that social experience, and it's, I have a student that's graduated high school, and it's attending UWM in the fall. So it's front and center for me, the experiences and the sentiments of a kid who is looking forward to their first collegiate experience. and now it's having to find other ways to go about it. So it helps me understand that firsthand when I talk to prospective families and prospective students or recently admitted students, that I do understand some of their concerns. I understand where they're coming from.
And let's tell folks, can students still apply, whether they're right out of high school or adults, for the fall? Is that still taking place?
Yes, that is taking place. We are unique in the sense that we have rolling admission. I mean, there's a cutoff, right? That happens in August 1st, I want to say. But we're still, accepting applicants, folks who have a desire to attend fall or even spring to go through that process. We did have a campaign June 1st. Anyone who wanted to apply by June 1st they got a $500 scholarship to attend in the fall. So a lot of students and families benefited from that cutoff June 1st, and that was post-COVID decision from campus to really be encouraging of students thinking about coming to UWM, and also students having a little bit of help, given that every situation out there, it's tough. Families are going through some tough times, and money is definitely a big help. So we invested about $1.6 million to put $500 in the hands of every admitted student that confirmed that they were going to come to us this fall, which a lot of them benefited from that.
And that's important for folks to know, in case there were people or young folks planning on going somewhere else, maybe a hotspot of the pandemic, and decide to stay home, that they could stay here, and either complete here or do a semester and then return. If they don't have those other options where they were thinking of going, they still have time to register. How did you handle internet access for people who you gave computers to, who might not have that in their home?
Yeah, I think if you think back, I think there were a few carriers here in the city.
Oh, there was.
Yeah, and there was a few links when they offer free internet connectivity that were, we were able to, in every communication we had to students, we added that information, and students told us that they had benefited. We walked them through the process, either when we were on the phone with them or, and the campus also had provided some information as to how to connect to networks and things like that. We obviously didn't want any student to come to campus and be exposed to anything or, do that, but we were able to provide them with both third-party information, but also information on campus connections.
All right, let's say some hellos here and see if we have any questions. Our people are being quiet today. Hector Florentino, MATC is a great alternative. Yes, it is, Hector, and we did invite MATC to be with us this week, and we were not able to get a commitment from them, but we hope sometime in the future we will. And MATC and UWM have a great partnership as well. You want to share a little bit about that, Alberto?
Well, yeah, I mean, MATC is and has been for many years an instrumental partner. They're the biggest feeder of transfer students to UWM, and historically has been that way. We have, a number of different articulation agreements where students can attend MATC for their first 2 years and then complete their bachelor's at UWM, and save some money on the front end, right? We have a number of those articulation agreements in a number of different academic areas, from nursing to education, IT and all those programs. So that's something that we continue to enhance and trying to build upon that. The other piece is that we are partners in the MCube initiative that connects the three largest public institutions in the city, which is MPS, MITC, and UWM. So for the last 2-3 years, we've been partnering together as to create pathways for students to know that, they can go, to MITC, eventually to UWM, or come straight to UWM, or completely into MITC. So really being transparent about those options and work in partnership, because like I said before, we serve the largest group of young people that are pursuing education in the city. So why not, right? Why not work together to provide scholarships, to create, streamline those processes and not work in isolation from each other.
Now let's see a couple more comments here. Hector said, I'll hook you up with someone from enrollment. You're welcome to contact Marlene, our forum coordinator. He says, we work with RHC as well, Pipeline to Transition UWM. Pati Álvarez, muchas gracias por su trabajo, Alberto. ¿Y quién tiene una guacamaya?
Sí, I have a parakeet, so I apologize for her squeaking.
There's my Spanish was limited. I had no idea what that was. I was thinking it was an instrument, because I know you're also involved in Puerto Rican traditional music. All right, let's talk about the Roberto Hernandez Center. Am I remembering right? This year is the 50th, or was it last year?
This year is the 50th.
I had the honor of staffing the 40th anniversary.
Correct, yes.
Committee. And so it's the 50th. Let's tell people what it is, and then let's talk about the programs and services you offer in your staff.
Sure. So yeah, this year we are very excited, and so is my parakeet. Every time I'm sharing good news, she gets excited. But yeah, to be exact, August 27, 50 years ago, as many people may know, the community and a group of students and activists demanded that a center needed to be created at UWM to serve the growing Latino community 50 years ago. And that led to the creation of the Spanish-speaking outreach and later on the Roberto Hernandez Center. So we're very, very excited because, what once was 12 Latino students at UWM in 1970 has grown to over 2,300 Latino students attending campus right now. So the center, really has been instrumental in that history of advancing our community, advancing our students, always trying to stay connected and collaborate with other entities in the community to provide the access that is necessary, right? And that work, has never been more important than now. I think we continue to look for ways that we can best serve, our students, our families. And yeah, we're excited. October 22nd this year, we're planning to host a recognition and invite community, invite students, invite alumni, and truly celebrate this milestone, and begin to imagine what the next 50 years ought to look like, right? And so it's very important for us to not just recognize what has transcended, but also important for us to recognize how we want to continue to move forward and continue to grow the number of students that come through the campus, receive services, and graduate successfully. So please mark the date, and more information will be provided as we move forward. But one of the key components of this recognition, Tammy, I might have mentioned this to you before, is that we are working and enhancing the oral history for the 50 years that have passed. So currently the UWM library is home to archives and a lot of the history of activism that took place in 1970 that led to the creation of the center. But we want to amplify that. And so right now we're in a process of conducting interviews, reaching out to elders, to women, to children, to community in general that has been part of this last 50 years, from beginning to the present. So you might be tapped on the shoulder soon, Tammy, to come in and provide us with your stories, because everybody is part of this celebration and this history, and that we can look 50 years back and say, this what took place at UWM in the city of Milwaukee, and these are the protagonists, and these are the people who made it happen and who had put their granito de arena in that history. So that is something that we're proud of, and it's moving along rather well, and hopefully by October 22nd we can provide the community with a sneak peek of what those stories can be found, and where folks can learn more about our history.
And to make connection for folks to what's happening today in protests, what's being marked this year as the 50th anniversary was the takeover of Chapman Hall, which was the chancellor's office, demanding services for the Latino IX Spanish-speaking community. And so just to give encouragement to our current leaders of protest, that we haven't seen change in America without protest. And we are direct recipients of those brave souls. And for us, a couple other connections is the vice president of our board, Carmen Cabrera, was a young adult, a teenager.
Correct.
During the time of that protest. And we have so many leaders like Jesus Salas with us, Ernesto Chacon. Another connection is our alderman, Jose Perez's mom was the first official secretary for that movement. And so there's still a lot of connection that exists. And then during the 40th, we did a whole series of oral histories that are available to folks from people, all of those who were present and some of their descendants. So you can get those oral histories. Let's see if we have any questions, and then we'll talk about your programs and services.
Sure.
Ben Juarez, hola, just saying hi to my gente. Gente, keep up the great work. How are we going to celebrate that? Ben is just making a smiley face.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're considering all possibilities at this time. The thought was to host something on campus and the fourth floor of the library, and do a library takeover, so to speak, with images and a lot of the documents, and for people to have a full experience on that day. We're also contemplating the idea of doing a series of virtual events leading up to that, because when you try to be inclusive of all that history, I mean, you're talking about a lot of things that have transcended. So we want to honor different aspects of our history, but allow for folks to participate at different levels. Whether it's having a panel with some of these elders that you mentioned, Tammy, that are living heroes in our community. They're alive, and a lot of folks don't know that they are still doing great work. They're still being active and really advancing things in our community, and that they can talk to them and they can ask questions and they can pick their brain about what was life 50 years ago. What was it like to be inside Chapman Hall, arguing about and advocating for services, and really going through that.
And now we have robust services at the Roberto Hernandez Center because of that. We have only about 2 minutes left. How about talk to us 2 or 3 minutes, and then talk to us about what programs and service you have.
Mira, I want to talk about what we're doing this summer, because when you asked earlier about how, as a campus, we're reacting to providing services, we've gone ahead and put together a series of things. Number one, we have weekly virtual charlas or chat that are available for our families of prospective students, and they can come into this virtual space on a weekly basis and talk to us and ask questions and learn about the services that the center provides, the academic support that we provide all of our students, the different events that we host throughout the year, the scholarship, the emergency funds that we have available through the Latino student fund that we award to students on a yearly basis, and then get all their concerns and questions asked. The other thing that we're doing is, as part of the new student orientation during the summer, we're providing Spanish language orientation for our familias. So families who in the past, or were considering not attending because language was a barrier, they can come into any of the dates that you see listed and go to the link that's provided and talk and learn about the Roberto Hernandez Center, meet the staff, ask questions. We can talk about best practices about advising and resources that are available to them. And making that really personal connection with families, which is so important. Many of our families are sending their first child to college. So what does that look like? What does that feel like? What should they expect as parents sending their kids to college for the first time? And then lastly, we're also hosting the Bienvenida event, which is a welcome event for all Latino students that are attending in the fall, both transfer and incoming freshmen. Bienvenida was piloted last year, and we had great success, and it was an in-person event. This year, we're going the virtual route, and we already have over 85 students signed up. We're making phone calls to almost 600 students that have been admitted to UWM for fall. So we're engaging with students throughout summer and making sure that they have all their boxes checked. And lastly, another event that we're doing to build community is the affinity sessions space that we have for students. So we understand that coming into college, being disconnected from your high school during the summer can create what we call the summer melt. So we want to build community and bring students together. So this is a session that is led by Latino students that are currently at UWM, and we are there in the space as well as a center to answer questions and to provide additional support during those conversations. But we're busy this summer, and we're providing different platforms for students so they know that the center is there for them, that we're home away from home, and that moving forward into the fall, we can continue to enhance those practices. I can mention before, academic advising is a centerpiece in everything that we do out of the center. I mean, the other mission we have is to advance research and really encourage students to consider going into graduate school and pursue, more higher learning, and then of course staying connected with community, which is also extremely important. And in the absence of being at places like Mexican Fiesta this year and Puerto Rican Festival and other community events, we're doing things a little bit differently and connecting with our community partners in different ways to make sure that the center is there for them, that we're sharing information both ways, and that students can feel supported and families know where to go for help.
Well, we thank you for being with us. We've had a long-standing partnership, SOC and the Roberto Hernandez Center. We're always with you during Cesar Chavez Week. And so we look forward to our continued partnership and digging in with you. Also, very excited to see all that's coming out of the Roberto Hernandez Center. You're doing a great job.
Thank you so much, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Claro, be safe.
Pónganse la máscara, comunidad. We got to protect ourselves.
Así. All right. Bye-bye. All right, folks, glad to bring to you our institutions and our leaders and get you ready for the rest of the summer and the fall with your education, information, and needs. I'm going to ask our coronavirus coordinator, who's also our form coordinator, Marlene Zaranda, come on, and she's going to give us an update. Hola, Marlene.
Hi. Today I'm going to give an update on long-term effects of COVID-19. And I'm also going to talk about mask update. So let me just give you guys a little rundown on the mask challenge that we're doing. So for the mask challenge, we ask you to take a picture of yourself wearing a mask and post it on your social media. And then you should tag 3 individuals that you know, so then we can spread awareness of pledging to wear your mask during this time and pledging to wear your mask everywhere you go, so then we can decrease COVID-19 numbers in Milwaukee. So that being said, I'm now going to share my screen with you so then you can see my PowerPoint that I have ready. Okay. So here we have the long-term effects of COVID-19. So I'd like to say that there are long-term effects of COVID-19, but many times that only happens if you have experienced severe COVID-19 symptoms. So if you're getting mild COVID-19 symptoms, just like runny nose or a cough or a high fever, you're most likely not going to experience severe COVID-19 symptoms. And all of this information was from the CDC and from recent COVID-19 studies that were implemented by the American Heart Association. And I have shared all of those in the comment section, so you can take a look at them and read about the current COVID-19 symptoms that we experience and the COVID-19 long-term effects. So what damage happens to our body when we have COVID-19? So I'm going to go over firstly what happens to our body with COVID-19, and then I'll talk about the long-term effects. So growing evidence suggests that the coronavirus, mostly known to cause respiratory illness, can also affect many of the body's primary organs. So doctors have reported inflammation to the heart and damage to the muscle. Some patients have died from severe heart attacks, and that is because there's an increase of blood clots within the body. And then blood vessels, so blood clotting in major arteries and veins has been reported. Clots can break off and damage multiple organs by stopping blood flow in the entire body. For kidneys, many COVID-19 patients suffer serious kidney damage and require dialysis. And for the brain, people with COVID-19 had strokes and seizures. Some have reported confusion or delirium, which is, you're delusional, not directly involving the brain, but a central nervous issue. So many patients have reported losing their sense of smell as well. For lungs, the virus can cause pneumonia, in which the lungs become inflamed and fill with fluid. Patients may require ventilation. Ventilation is when you need a breathing system that helps you maintain your breath throughout your COVID-19 process. So as the infection progresses, the virus can cause serious lung damage, which can be fatal, and that's one of the long-term effects. It is lung damage. And then in the intestines, roughly 20% of patients report diarrhea as an early symptom. The virus has been found in the lower intestinal tract of some patients. So I'd like to add on to that COVID-19 can cause a range of symptoms of wildly varying severity in people. So some might be asymptomatic, which means you don't have any symptoms that show up, or have mild symptoms, while others are sick enough that they need hospitalization and supplementary oxygen and the use of a ventilator. Broadly, as a respiratory virus, COVID-19 causes breathlessness, fatigue, and muscle ache, As the pandemic has evolved and there's more documentation of cases, a new symptom began to emerge, and that's the partial or total loss of the sense of smell and taste. This in itself is not unusual for a respiratory viral infection, but what was unique is that people had this symptom without any of the other usual symptoms of the infection. So you can have COVID-19 and you can only just have a loss of taste and smell, and you have no other symptoms. So that's why it's important to get tested so you're aware. So it's now clear that coronavirus doesn't just attack the respiratory system, and some people have reported gut issues and problems with their kidneys. Severe COVID-19 patients have experienced what's called a cytokine storm, and that's when the body's immune system goes into a potential fatal overdrive and leads to multiple organ failures. So for now, it appears most patients who have had mild symptoms can expect no lasting harm. But for the vast majority of people who get coronavirus, and have, long-term effects due to being immunocompromised and having chronic diseases and other issues, there can be long-term effects, and that all that information is from the Johns Hopkins University Center for Health Security in Baltimore. So now I'm going to kind of talk about sorry, that skipped a bunch of so the long-term effects of COVID-19. Since COVID-19 was only discovered a few months ago, its long-term effects are unknown. And while researchers are trying to look at parallels with other coronaviruses, there are other types of coronaviruses, like SARS and MERS, it will take time to have a full picture of the long-term consequences of infection with COVID-19. But majority of the long-term effects are found in the lungs, heart, kidneys, and brain and mental health. So let's take a look at those. For the lungs, COVID-19 patients who developed acute respiratory distress syndrome, a life-threatening lung injury due to infection, and had to be hospitalized in the intensive care unit are more likely to have long-term consequences. There are people who are going to have scarring in their lungs from what's happened, and that may not be completely reversible. It's not just with coronavirus. This has been seen in all types of pneumonia and lung infections that have been apparent in the past. These patients may have diminished lung function that's going to persist, including decreased exercise capacity that leaves them short of breath. According to doctors in Hong Kong, they've reported that some COVID-19 survivors had 20 to 30% drop in lung function after recovery, and they may gasp if they walk a bit more quickly than they normally do. For the heart, about 20% of patients with COVID-19 from China had heart damage during hospitalization. And another study discovered about 16% of patients developed arrhythmia, while other reports indicated cases of acute onset heart failure, heart attack, and cardiac arrest after coronavirus infection. This is all according to the American College of Cardiology. Another study discovered about 16% of patients plus any long-term lung disease can have effects on the heart, particularly its right side. The lungs and heart are coupled tightly, so they work as one, the heart and lungs. Sometimes when the lungs are ill, the pulmonary arteries, so the arteries that take blood to your heart and lungs and throughout your entire body. It leaves the right side of the heart without any, access to any oxygen, and can also develop inflammation, disease, or thickening in that area. So in addition, viral illnesses can destabilize plaque in the arteries, potentially resulting in a blockage and putting patients at risk of a heart attack. So for the kidneys, right now, there's really no evidence that COVID-19 hurts the kidneys of people who have mild to moderate infection, but kidneys in people that have the severe type of COVID-19, there's been 25 to 50% who develop abnormalities in kidneys. So those patients have more protein and red blood cells in their urine, and that's about 15% of them also develop a decline in their ability to filter out their urine. So for the brain and mental health, the longer patients have to remain in the ICU, the more likely they are to suffer long-term cognitive and emotional effects of being, under so much medication in the ICU. So doctors call this post-intensive care syndrome or post-ICU delirium, and they describe it as a type of post-traumatic stress. So often when patients come out of the ICU, they really struggle to think as clearly as they did before. And this means that there might be some neurological symptoms that can be possible. Other coronaviruses have affected humans before, and they essentially can affect the central nervous system. So it makes sense that COVID-19 may have neurological manifestations as well. So it can cause dizziness, headache, and taste and smell impairment as a long-term effect. And that is the end of my presentation. I hope I gave you a lot of insight and information about the long-term effects of COVID-19 and the current effects of COVID-19 on the human body.
Marlene, could you share what sources gave that information, just so people know?
Yeah, they are it's from the CDC, the American Heart Association, and from an article written by BBC, and there's a educated resource that was published recently, and I have that in the comment section as well, and it's called the long-term effects of COVID-19. I don't recall what doctor it was written by, but I can have that up for you in more detail.
All right, thank you. We're going to move quickly now to bring on Gabe Charles, our Civic Engagement Manager, for an update.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here with you on this Friday. A lot has happened this week. I know Tammy already mentioned one of the major things a couple days ago, that is the confirmation of the appointment of Claire Woodall-Bogg as the Executive Director of the Milwaukee Election Commission. And this was a very interesting appointment of one of these positions by the mayor, because she had withdrawn her candidacy a couple weeks ago, and she withdrew her candidacy before she was set to be questioned by members of the Common Council on how she intends to incorporate advancing racial equity in Milwaukee into her work. Because, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, all of the appointments made by the mayor were sent back to be heard from by their respective committees. And so she was set to be heard from at the Judiciary and Legislation Committee meeting, but withdrew her candidacy before that happened, and then reasserted her desire for the position after that committee meeting happened. And then, just with the urgency of the elections, was not voted to be heard from at the Common Council meeting on Tuesday. So really kind of interesting, maybe strange chain of events. She claims that it has nothing to do with not wanting to be questioned and is open to having conversations. It just does seem a bit strange. But she has been appointed as the executive director, appointed and confirmed as the executive director of the Milwaukee Election Commission. So we can rest easy somewhat knowing that we have someone leading that commission to make sure that these elections run as smoothly as possible. Other than that confirmation of an appointment by the mayor, there were a number of other appointments that were confirmed as well. But some other resolutions were passed related to policing. So there was a resolution that would direct the police department to have purchases of crowd response, crowd control, military grade, and militaristic equipment be approved by the Common Council. And then there were a number of resolutions that we've talked about in previous forums that would urge the Fire and Police Commission to adopt or implement a certain rule or practice, because as mentioned before, the Common Council isn't who oversees the police department, it's the Fire and Police Commission. So what the Common Council wants to see, they would have to urge the Fire and Police Commission to implement. And so there's 4 or 5 resolutions that would urge the Fire and Police Commission to do something, and I'll just read through those quickly. There is one that would urge them to adopt a rule requiring police officers to file a report every time they draw a gun, mace, stun gun on duty. And all these ones that I'm going to read passed. So they are now on file and are going to move along to the Fire and Police Commission. Another resolution that would urge the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners to adopt standard operating procedures prohibiting certain types of restraints and holds, such as chokeholds and strangleholds. Another resolution urging them to adopt a policy to implement a database providing information to the public regarding police officers' records. Another one that would urge them to collaborate with the police department to engage with community leaders to rebuild trust and discuss community-oriented strategies to address unrest. And then the last one would urge them to double recruitment efforts within Milwaukee neighborhoods so that fire and police departments are diverse or more diverse and more reflective of the communities that they serve. So those are all resolutions that were passed related to the Fire and Police Commission or to policing that we've talked about before, but now they're officially confirmed and passed through the Common Council. And then another one that I thought was really worthy of mentioning was a resolution that would seek the introduction of legislation that would permit the city of Milwaukee to create a program certifying that properties are lead safe before they are rented to the public. So many of us know that lead is a huge issue on the South Side. There's a number of organizations that have lead prevention programs and have educational campaigns that talk about where you can find lead and how lead can have adverse effects, especially on children. And so I think a program like this would be really important to ensure that those renting, who aren't the owners, who aren't really responsible for that property, to know that they are safe when they're moving into a property or, renting a property. So we'll definitely be watching that. And then something that happened at state level this week was that a Supreme Court decision was made that would reduce the governor's veto authority, essentially throwing out 3 changes he made to the state budget last year related to electrical vehicle charging stations and grants for alternative fuels. historically, the Supreme Court has given Wisconsin governors broad authority to rewrite budgets and some other legislation using partial vetoes. And his veto powers, this time he used to eliminate parts of some sentences to come up, sentences of the budget, to come up with new proposals. And so this lawsuit that was brought to the Supreme Court challenged some of those vetoes that were made and argued that the court should reverse ones. So vetoes should reverse some vetoes that stitched words together to create something that didn't resemble what legislators intended. So this is really an expansive case and a lot of information, and just writing was in the decision, and very complex, but we will definitely be watching this as well, because it leaves unclear what kind of veto power the governor then can utilize, or how they can utilize it. So we will definitely be watching that as well. And then something else I want to do with everyone right now is, for those of you who aren't aware, I was really thankful to hear that Jeanette Kowalik had really uplifted the power of the vote and making sure that we all vote, and even having Marlene explain how easy absentee voting is. I know we've talked about this a lot on the forum before. We do have an August primary coming up, August 11th, so about a month away now. And there are some important positions that we need to be looking at. So I'm going to present my screen just to show you how you can see who will be on your ballot. So as usual, we're always promoting myvote.wisconsin.gov. And then if you go up here, you can click what's on my ballot. And here I'm just going to enter in the address of Southside Organizing Center. And let's see what's going to be on the ballot for a lot of folks that live in the area. And this is a partisan primary, so this is going to be deciding who is going to be running against each other in November for these specific positions. So we have, on the Democratic side, representative for District 4 in Congress, so that's national. We have Congresswoman Gwen Moore. She is not going to have an opponent on the Democratic side, but she will be having in November, we'll have a Republican opponent. And then, so representative to the Assembly District 9, so Southside is District 9 to the State Assembly. So we have the current representative is Marisabel Cabrera, and she will be running against Cristian Saldivar for the Democratic nomination. And then we have Milwaukee County District Attorney John Chisholm without an opponent. Same with County Clerk, County Treasurer. But that's, again, these ones that don't have opponents will have them in November, because if we go down here and start looking at Republican, so representative in Congress District 4, whoever of these two, Tim Rogers or Cindy Werner, wins the Republican nomination will run against Gwen Moore, because she's the Democratic nomination. So just to give that little explanation. And then Veronica Diaz, who doesn't have an opponent, will run against either Marisabel Cabrera or Cristian Saldivar, and so on and so forth. So you can see who you'll be voting for. Our local representatives and senators are just as important as our national ones. So these are really important positions to be paying attention to and voting for. So make sure you're requesting your absentee ballots. You can do that here as well. vote absentee. It's all on the same website. Everything is really easy to access here. So make sure you're doing that. And then, of course, reach out to us if you have any issues. Then I'm also going to share with you all, as I do every Friday, let's take a look at where we are at with these census numbers and these hard to count numbers. So last week, we didn't see really much of any increase in these response rates. So let's take a look this week. We have 36%. Moving on, then we have, again, 36%, 36.2. At least all of these are now in the 36 range. Some of them weren't last week. That one's still at 33, 39. I think this moved up a couple point something percent from last week. Almost at 40. That's where we want to see them. We at least want to see them all yellow. 37, 36. 36.9, almost 37, 34, 35.8, 39. So this is good. We at least, well, not good, better than last week. Only 3 out of all of these are still haven't reached 36. So the rest of them have all at least reached 36. And, I'll take note of what these percentages are at, and we will definitely see what the uptick was next week when I look at this again, So again, hopefully all of you are talking to your neighbors and friends about the importance of the census. It is so vital that we get counted. We need to show the world, the country, that we are here and that we count and we care about our community. This is going to be vital for political representation and for federal funding. If your streets flooded last night with some of the raining, if you have potholes, if your parks aren't up to par how you'd like them to be, if you want more access for your students, all of this plays into the census. So please make sure you're getting counted and make sure you are promoting it to your friends and family, especially in those neighborhoods that we just looked at. And with that, I will give it back to Tammy, and I hope all of you have a really safe and joyful weekend. I will see you all next week.
Thank you, Gabe. Folks, we've run over, so I'm going to wrap up quickly. Please fill out the survey, be safe, and we'll leave you with these thank yous.
Hi, I'm Marisol Diaz, Communications Manager at SOC. We would like to thank everyone for supporting our 3 o'clock with SOC live show and for completing our SOC survey. In addition to thanking our residents for tuning in and sharing our show, we would also like to thank the following sponsors: Wisconsin Voices, Community Development Block Grants, Neal Philanthropy State Infrastructure Fund, Movement Voter Project, Catholic Campaign for Human Development, Zilber Foundation, City of Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention, Tides Foundation, Employ Milwaukee, and all of the faithful individuals who support SOC through their personal donations. Thank you.